viewers, and welcome to another fresh episode of Inside Out. Today, with me, we're going to be discussing an interesting topic. Of course, we all know the season we are in. It is the season of the World Cup, and man, a lot has been happening. At the moment, it's quite unfortunate that there is no African team left in the World Cup, and the challenge keep getting hotter and hotter. Let me not move faster than my shadow. Today, with me in the studio, I have a very important personnel to discuss everything about African football, the current World Cup tournament that is ongoing, and possibly the questions you might have in mind and have been looking for an answer to. I have with me today in the studio Mr. Ikedi Isiguzo. He is a veteran Nigerian journalist and media strategist with over 4 decades of distinguished experience across print, broadcast, and media development. Sports editor, deputy editor, and chairman of editorial board of Vanguard, the daily edition of Vanguard newspaper, and at another time, editor of Sports Now, a special sports publication in the Vanguard group. So you see right there, we have the right person for this job. It is an honor to welcome you to our studio this morning. Thanks for coming
Thank you very much.
on this program. Very pleased to have you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's get in. How's been the World Cup experience? Let's start from there. I believe you're following the tournament.
Yes, I do. But sometimes one is put off by so many errors. There are so many errors which will easily bring us back to the issue of human decisions. With technology and so on, we still see that there are many errors. And then, of course, the human decision still overrides the technology decision. So that's my only concern. Otherwise, it's gone well.
All right. So first off, we one relevant thing that we should take note of in this World Cup is the prominence of players of African descent in teams that are best performing. And of course, like I said, there are no African team left right now in the tournament, but we can't fail to see that there are African players. Let's talk about France. We have Kylian Mbappe, we have Ousmane Dembele. Talking about England, the Saka, Chukwueze, and the rest of it, many of which are Nigerians. So my first question, how come the number of players of African descent in the national team that's outside Africa are this much?
There are many issues. One is the issue of migration, then colonial history too. But beyond that, the best talents wherever they are must look for where the best opportunities are. And that's what is going on. That's why anybody who can play some reasonable football here goes abroad. And many of them, if they have the opportunity to play for the teams out there, the national teams out there, they do. The opportunities are better, the welfare is better, the training is better, and the recognition accorded the players. All these are better. So that's what happens. Secondly, you also find out that even the African teams that did well, except Cape Verde, for example, they have strong leagues, much stronger than Nigerian's league. And this is evident in the continental competitions, where teams are drawn from the national leagues. You see how poorly we do in those competitions. But those other countries are very strong in those competitions and so on. So best talents will go to the best places. That's what is happening.
All right. So in your view, Nigeria didn't qualify for the World Cup, and we had the best. This is okay. Last tournament, Morocco reached semi-final, and this time around, this was quite unfortunate. They were knocked out by France.
Yes.
In your view, if Nigeria has, because Morocco seems to be like the best team in Africa right now in terms of playing the football, if Nigeria were to have qualified for the World Cup, do you think with the number of Nigerian players we have outside, do you think harnessing these players we can be able to do better or would have advanced even further in the World Cup?
Well, qualifying is a different thing from being in the World Cup proper. But what I see is Nigerians want to be at the World Cup, all types of things, but people are just talking. It takes a lot of work, not the number of players you have in foreign leagues and so on, because even in that case, you have to get them to work together, make sure you make the right selections, get them to play as a team, which is very important. We've seen people scoring goals, and many of them are not people you expect to score goals, but they're all working as a team. So the number of players we have outside would not have been a factor as much as resolving the issues around us, some of which include bonuses that are never paid. All sorts of issues come up. Even individual players who have some disagreement either with the team or with the management of the team, those things are not resolved and they come up when you play. It's not so easy to put those things behind and play. The selection process, people are alleged that it's so corrupt that you can hardly get in. So all those things are there. It will be the best players, the best technical team working together, and then the best conditions. And increasingly, we find it difficult to create those conditions. Resources for training, they come out so late, and even when it comes out, you don't know if it's properly used and so on. So those are the things that will contribute to factors or to performance in the World Cup proper. Not just the number of players you have and where they are based.
So, with these issues that you've mentioned, what is the way out of this? What can be done? Because if we have this number of players that are running out of Africa to go play for European teams, to go play for outside, to go play outside, what can Africans do by extension? I'm bringing it down to Nigeria. What can we do to be able to fix these problems now that you've mentioned as the reason why we were not able to qualify for the World Cup, and even if we had qualified, might not be able to go far?
Well, we have unique problems when you talk about Nigeria. One of which is the total absence of accountability. You can't have any reasonable governance in any area without accountability. Our football is just about money coming from CAF, coming from FIFA. How it is spent, those who are in those positions will resist accounting for it. They say you're interfering with FIFA, you're interfering with CAF. They forget that Nigerian football is a national property. And beyond that, the Football Federation, as it calls itself, because by law it's Football Association, there's no Football Federation, takes money from government. Takes government, and there's a 2011 judgment that says, since you take money from government, you should account. You should account. That judgment wasn't appealed or been lifted, so it's still there. What are the issues? One, people do everything, including borrowing money, pressing the influence of governors and whoever to get into the federation. And once they get there, they just sit in there, act as if the money for developing football is theirs. They will still take money from the government and they don't account to anybody. Let me give you an instance. FIFA has been running development programs for more than 10 years now. Development programs with money from sponsors. What do these programs entail? Building of facilities. Each program comes with certain things that need to be done. Whether there are training facilities for the national team, whether there are training facilities for seminars, workshops, and so on, whether there are facilities for referees, all that. Nigeria has done nothing. What happens if I'm in a position I try to build that facility maybe in my village? It's not completed. We don't have a single such facility completed. Other countries they have training centers, they have technical centers. Then FIFA does seminars for the media, for referees, for marketers, everything to help improve the game. FIFA gives money for youth leagues, women's league, various age football in secondary schools. But what happens to our own? So that's where the issues are. There is too much corruption. It's not even something nobody accounts. Whether it's the money they get from government, whether it's the money they get from sponsors, whether it's the money from FIFA or CAF, nobody accounts. Whether it's money they get from winning, if you get to the World Cup, as you progress, you make a lot of money. They don't account for it. They treat it as their personal property, and that has to stop. As the World Cup progress, I've been having a laugh. I see all sorts of people suggesting what should be done. Some people are asking government to weigh in. It's good. It's very important. But the thing government should do for us is to weed out the people who are there, who are making it impossible for football to grow. They will argue that it's not government's business. It is. The Premiership, we are making a noise, and the British government had to intervene in 1992. That's how we got to where the Premiership is now. And once he put it in a very good position, he puts up a management for it and goes away. And those are the type of things we want to see. And everybody's talking about the Premiership now. It doesn't seem possible that the Premiership at any point will go back. And that has also had an influence in British football. There has been a tremendous growth, as you are seeing. It has been some time, but that's how it is. It's a lot of work to do. You see, English players have been influenced by the huge presence of world-class players, within their league. And beyond that, they play in European competitions, world-class players again. So the influence from Africa, Latin America, wherever, has helped English football to where it is. But we have a lot of work to do. Not our own people are just content with, there is FIFA Congress, you attend CAF Congress, there are allowances to make, you make money from government, and we cannot go that way. And unfortunately, the government itself does not seem to understand that sports is important and do something about it, which is the problem. We have a commission, what they call a commission, a two-man body. It has done 2 years now, a two-man body. I mean, it's not done anyway. And it claims it's a commission. Nobody screened these people. Nobody screened them. The national, but they spend public money. It's not much different from the fake agency they're talking about. There is no law setting up this way. It's just like if I'm in power, I call two people or so, balance it, one from the north, one from the south, and I'm releasing public money to them. And this money is approved for Ministry of Sports. You give it to Sports Commission to spend. So we have a lot of work to do. You need people who have capacity, not you turned up, you're wearing suit or agbada or whatever, people who have capacity for work. People who even understand the things that need to be done. Not people with their eyes on the money. People who will be so passionate about the things to do that they will find the money. And if the people are there, you see sponsors will come in. And the work is not at the level of call people from England, you're in camp. No, it starts from the schools. So that we get to a point that we have a strong league. As I said, except Cape Verde, there is none of those teams that got to the World Cup or got to a reasonable level that don't have strong leagues. Because that's what inspires the next generation of players. That's what we create a huge pool from which you take players. Because what we do now is anybody who can is playing in England. It wasn't like that. What we used to do was we had a strong league. We had a national team of home-based players. Then if there are gaps, if there are positions where we don't have very strong players, then we look out. Now, you can hardly have anybody from the local league being in the national team. So we have a lot of work to do. It's not even a 4-year job. People are saying, will we go to the next World Cup? I don't think we will. Because there is a lot more work to do. There are countries that draw inspiration from what other people do. Yeah. And in our own case, even if we win the World Cup, it doesn't improve anything about what we do because we don't have the foundations that you can feed things in for improvement. We won't even know how we won. And even if a study is done as it should be done of why we won or why we're not doing, nobody reads that. Nobody uses all those studies to try and for future planning and so on. And even if you plan, you just find there are things that are not ready. So we have work to do. We
Interesting.
have work to do.
Accountability. If there's one thing I picked from there, even at the federal government level, one thing that Nigeria is lacking is accountability. My very next question, I would say, can you give your advice on how to reverse the rejection of Nigeria by some of her sports stars, be it football, athletics, or other forms of sport? We'll find out that some Nigerians, even though they have dual citizenship, but when the opportunity comes or when the time comes for them to associate with Nigeria or maybe play or perform for Nigeria in any sport whatsoever, you see them pulling back. They are not willing, they are not that eagerness to want to represent or to want to come forward to represent Nigeria is not there. What's your advice or what can you say about that?
But let me tell you, all this boil down to human management. The people who run sports, our sports, they believe they are the stars of the show. Whereas everybody knows it's the athletes. No matter what you do, if the athletes don't turn up, there is no show. But our people, it goes all the way, including the allowances they pay and so on. It's the officials that are the main people there. Which is why, very simple thing, we saw that in Tokyo, Philly. Her event was changed and she wasn't told. And they did that as if it's that official who will run. Simple thing, you ask her, but they did that because there are some people they want to get in. All sorts of things that are going on. The level of corruption is incredible. And unless we deal with it, we are not going anywhere. That corruption includes not selecting people who should go in. That corruption includes putting them in the wrong event, as we saw with Ophili. That corruption includes the welfare of athletes. Like you're talking about, why would they go to another? Why wouldn't you? As I said, the best talents look for the best opportunities. There are people who want to win an Olympic medal in their lifetime. So if a country that gives them that opportunity calls, they go. That's what happens. A country that gives them that opportunity, they go. And we see it all over the world. People move because of opportunities. But even with Nigeria, what we are seeing is that the opportunities we have, we don't use them well. We don't use them well. We still have good athletes, we have good players all along. And increasingly, what our officials even do is to do absolutely nothing about developing sports here. An example is basketball. You can hardly find a home-based player because our skills are so basic. But in not developing the local league, we lose something. Except those born abroad. Years back, Akim Olajuwon was here now, before he went to Houston to play and so on. So we are losing the opportunity of even bringing up our athletes to a certain level where they will be able to go abroad. So we just wait. Basketball, we have them. We go to America, we take them. That on itself kills basketball here. Even if you have a league, the people playing here don't have a chance. They don't have a hope that they can play for the national team. So, it doesn't make sense. So we need people who can manage human beings. That's one. We need people also who can manage the resources that are available. Part of that managing human beings is you talk to them. You talk to the situation in Japan, in Tokyo, and the way it was handled also shows you that we are not ready to do anything differently. Nobody was sacked. Nobody was even suspended. I doubt if anybody was formally queried about this. It's a mistake and so on. A mistake to change someone's event. We don't even know who did that till now. So we need a lot more transparency in the things that we are doing. And part of accountability is not just money. People have responsibility for things. Take that responsibility. If it goes well, they take responsibility. If it doesn't go well, they take responsibility. But from what we've seen, nobody's really in charge. Because if nobody's taking responsibility, nobody's in charge.
True, I agree with you. Are you optimistic with what we have now? Are you optimistic that as a nation we've learnt our lessons, we didn't qualify for this World Cup? Are you optimistic that we've learnt our mistakes and would qualify for the next edition of the World Cup? Just like what you mentioned or the things you stated to be the issues. If these are put in check, if things were to be done differently, are you optimistic that come the next World Cup, Nigeria will make it different?
Okay, I wouldn't even think that what we should be doing is to be thinking, oh, let's do this so that we qualify for the next World Cup. If we do that, after that next World Cup, we might collapse even below where we are now. Let's take time out and develop our sports, our football. One, getting all the components there, in there, you know. Welfare of the players is very important. The technical crew, and then even like dealing with corruption. That's very important. Dealing with corruption. There are some people whose only reason for being in football or sports is the money they expect to make,
I agree.
and they will do anything to get elected because of that, and that's their focus. They don't lose anything. Uh, there's no World Cup. Okay, they will lose money, the budget for the World Cup, but they will still attend all the FIFA meetings and so. For some of them, that is even very important, more important than us qualifying. What I think is we need to get a national sports. I don't say that enough. We need to have a sports commission. We had one by law. Membership is established by law. And what does that commission do? It has an overall view over sports. It can discipline the associations or the federations. It can have a long-term plan. It sends people out for training, even retiring athletes. That's what we used to do. You send them out for training. Some of them can come back to coach or be in administration. But now there is nothing. We are not building on a foundation. What will happen, assuming we qualify, however we qualify, because what happens with us to qualify has become very trying. Even for Nations Cup, to qualify has become such a huge, almost an impossible thing that even when we qualify, people are jumping up, oh, we've qualified and so on. So we need to have a plan for all these competitions. We need to have a commission that we look at sports from the grassroots. And once you have a commission, the states will also have commission. The local government councils will have sports bodies. But you better believe all these people they have. I won't be surprised if some states sponsor their FA people to attend the World Cup. This World Cup that we don't have a team in, and they don't know anything going on there.
True.
That's what. Then, more importantly, we need to get people who understand what happens into sports, international sports federations. It's important. Not the thing we do of people trying to get into the president or what and be going around with the person, photo opportunities. No. People who understand the politics. People who find opportunities for their country. People who find alliances that will help, for those opportunities to grow. Not just traveling around, we stay there how many years and so on, and we don't have anything. People who are also mentally strong enough, who are intelligent, that they can grow in those roles. It's important to have someone in the room where decisions are being made.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, from some of the refereeing decisions, I think it counted against Africa in the World Cup, But we need to have such people. We need to have even referees that, when last did we have top referees that are reckoned with? So it's a whole lot of work to do. But people are just interested. We've qualified. You go to the World Cup. You don't know how you qualify. You can't build up. Like now, we don't know if the coach will have a contract or not. Or we go through that same, looking for a coach. It might take half of the World Cup cycle and so on. So that's why I'm saying there's a lot of work to do. And when we look for a coach, we look for a coach we can afford. We look for a coach that will grow with the team, But those are not the things we do, because we are looking for big budget coaches and those who will sponsor them and we get commissions and so on. We'll have to be a lot less savvy if we are to make any progress, not just in football, but elsewhere.
All right, sir. So speaking about coach, I was going to ask, it's been a very long time that Nigeria had a home-based coach. At the moment, we have Eric Shell. I think the last I could remember was Samson Siasia. Okay, so what can you say as the problem or the reason why we can't find a coach? We have good players. Okocha Kanu Wankwo. We have so many people that were top people to reckon with, and these are people that did so well in their football career.
Are they
Why
coaches?
that's the question I'm posing to you now. So what's stopping them, or what's the reason why we can't get these people to coach our national team? Because from experience, they have the experience. They know what it is back end. It is not just anybody coming in to dictate how football is being run. But to my own understanding, I feel these people have had first-hand experience of football, what it takes, what should be done, or even maybe need a little training, or I don't know, to be able to meet up to the task of coaching our national team.
Okay, a deliberate decision has to be made on this. But just as I told you, I'm finding for a Nigerian coach, but as I'm telling you now, there is none. There is none. For the level of football being played, for who also will have the type of quality that you have that the players will respect. you know. So that's something we need to work on. And part of working on that is having someone who has excelled also. Let the person go outside to coach. You know, let the person go outside to coach and improve credentials, have a knowledge of what coaching is. Else we are not here. Our standards are not such that
So
you
high
can use for
to learn.
the national team currently.
Okay.
So, and even at that, which is part of the things I'm talking about, if a foreign coach comes, you expect that those attached to him will grow over time to handle the national team or things like that. No, but that's another level of patronage. I'll put who I know, I'll put who I like, and possibly take money from the person and all that. Sometimes you put them, you don't pay them. So when you travel, you get allowances. Our coaches are trained terribly, but they too themselves, they have to grow. They have to improve themselves. Some of them are not educated enough. Basic education. Some of them are not educated enough. Not to talk of the quality of certification they should have as coaches. Coaching certificates and the experience, to handle the national team, because it's becoming very, very complex. And if we have such a person, we also have to build him up, pay him well, and he has to carry himself well to earn the respect of the players. We hear stories of coaches taking money from people to put them in teams and all that, back to that corruption. So none of those things. We produce a coach who will have the respect of the players, or even a coach who will have a team, because it becomes the highest bidder type of thing. So, as I said, first we have to decide what we want to do with our football before we even talk of that. For now, we can use foreign coaches, but let them be ones with quality.
Quality. Let's talk about the World Cup, the uniqueness of this World Cup. This is the first of its kind that is hosted by three countries. Um, They've been at the beginning of the tournament. There were some hitches about some players coming into America, those that were banned, and we have the Iran who were not allowed into USA, and they had to go to Mexico and the rest of it. So, your view of the World Cup, what would you say this unique World Cup has been like?
Okay, I think the chase after money. FIFA has chased money so much that the World Cup is losing its value. It used to be 8 teams. We went to 16, 24, and now we're arriving at 48. And I think it's too much. Too much strain on organization, too much strain on the players themselves. The next season is already here. No time to recover and play and all that. So that's on the America's influence, if you ask me, has ruined the World Cup. America has set very dangerous precedents. Very dangerous precedents. So it's it will be difficult to have a World Cup where people are not referring to those precedents. And from now on, we'll have how many countries having to host? 48 teams. And it devalues the quality of the World Cup is. But somehow, the surprises from this World Cup has blinded us to that drop in quality. Those surprises, a Cape Verde that people thought we just play their 3 matches and go home, and that they were not willing to leave. So 48 is for me
It's quite
is
much.
too large. Yes, and then just as in other international competitions, your team qualified, even if we don't have diplomatic relationships with you, that your team qualified automatically means that team with its technical crew and players can go to the World Cup. Their supporters can go to the World Cup, but we didn't see that happen
Happening.
unless that's what Trump wanted. So those are the dangers in losing control. FIFA has lost control. FIFA was not didn't have enough control to say Iran should be in the US
Yes.
for the number of days it should be to prepare for 8 games. It was flying in from Mexico. That's a slap on the World Cup itself, and just bowing to Trump, because you expect with Americans' involvement in the World Cup, you make a lot more money,
Yeah.
which is what in the last maybe 12 years or more, that's all FIFA has been about, chasing money, chasing money. So it has to apply the brake and regain control of the World Cup. If not, very soon, and maybe very soon they will even say, let's play it every 2 years, so that we make a lot more money.
Interesting. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Thank
It
you.
was really nice speaking with you, and I believe we did justice to every question that was asked here today. All right, there you have it on today's episode of Inside Out. I have been speaking to a veteran journalist and a sports editor for the longest, Mr. Ikedi Isiguzo, who has done justice not just to the topic but has given his wisdom on sports generally, speaking about African football and Nigerian football. So this is where we'll draw the curtain today on today's episode of Inside Out. Until I come your way again next time, keep watching True Vision TV. I am Iberi Anyebo. Bye for now.